Hey guys, tonight we're slipping back into a cozy Victorian parlor, except instead of an expensive museum tour, you got a handful of penny toys in your palm, so tiny you probably won't survive if you drop them in the upholstery cushions. Trust me, I lost 3 micro tin soldiers under my couch last week. Picture the amber glow of gas lamps flickering off painted tin, the faint scent of polished mahogany wafting through the room, and your tea in hand ready to learn how these little playthings doubled as your tutors. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, let me know down in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is in your corner of the world, because it's always fun to see someone tuning in from, say, Bali at 3 a.m. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You feel the delicate weight of a tiny tin duck in your fingertips, glossy paint, chipped just enough to prove it's well-loved. In that moment, it's easy to imagine yourself back in 1851 at the Great Exhibition in London, a dazzling display of industrial marvels, where penny toys first stole the spotlight from grand steam engines and gleaming new locomotives. You can almost hear the steam whistle from Stephenson's rocket competing with the tinkle of coins dropped into street vendor cups. Those penny toys were the runaway stars of the fair, affordable souvenirs that let even the humblest visitor grasp a slice of innovation. You might chuckle at how they cost less than a single penny's worth of Sugar No Sugar Rush included, but those tin treasures packed more instructional punch than most fancy classroom tools of the day. Historians still debate whether their real value lay in education or pure entertainment, but one thing's certain, these toys became the original toy hacks for gentle learning. As you trace the edges of a miniature snap-top drum, you're transported to a bustling German factory near Nuremberg, where thin tin plates were stamped, painted, and assembled on conveyor belts that rumbled like distant thunder. It smells faintly of oil and enamel, a scent you'd never find in your modern, sterile playroom. The workers, some barely taller than the toys they made, moved with surprising grace and rumor. Has it they could churn out hundreds of penny animals per hour faster than you can scroll through a TikTok feed. Weirdly, early penny toys sometimes came with functioning wind-up keys. So if you timed it right, your little frog might hop right off the table. Just don't blame me when it launches itself into your teacup. Few people know that toy soldiers were originally designed with tinted glass eyes, an odd choice when you consider how easily those eyes could shatter and end up underfoot. And yes, there's a quirky footnote in the archival records that some children used these scraps of tin as substitute doorstops when they got bored. Definitely not a recommended lesson plan. You drag your feet across the oriental rug, hearing the soft thump of your slippers, and you can't help but compare penny toys to the fidget spinners of our time, only without the Bluetooth or hype videos. A tiny alphabet block carved from wood or cast in lead alloy sits in your palm, each letter painted in primary colors that have softened over time. With every click of the block, you're learning your ABCs just as a Victorian governess intended. The bright letters feel like candy-colored confetti against the muted hues of the parlor walls. Yet some naysayers whispered that such playthings distracted from formal lessons, and historians still debate whether children ever got past M is for mum or simply used the blocks to build miniature castles in the cradle. You sniff the air, catching hints of pipe tobacco and lavender sachets tucked into drawers, and realize that even in the strictest households, these toys brought a wrong but right kind of delight. No Wi-Fi required, no parental tech support needed. 3 cheers for simplicity, right? By now you're leaning back in a high-backed chair, the cushions sighing under your weight, and you can almost hear the creak of the floorboards as another tiny toy. This time, a painted tin ship glides across the polished oak table. Parents use models just like this to map out the expanse of the British Empire, pointing to India, Australia, and parts of Africa as they lectured on responsible citizenship. You follow along, tapping that little mast, and suddenly, geography feels as fun as a globe-trotting Netflix special. A strange fact few people know is that some toy ships carried microscopic maps hidden inside the hulls like secret compartments for smugglers, minus the contraband. These miniature voyages were designed to spark wanderlust, yet ironically, most Victorian families never boarded a train farther than the next town. Still, you can almost taste the salt air of those untraveled seas, as real as the vanilla-scented candles burning in the corner. In your hand, the penny toy feels warm as if it carries the glow of 100 playtimes. You remember that bent tin horse you saw at a flea market, one gentle twist, and it buckled right under you? It's a reminder that education isn't always about perfection. It's about curiosity, small missteps, and that unexpected sparkle when a lesson clicks. You sink deeper into the hush of the room, feeling wrapped in the soft hush of a bygone era, and you know this is only the beginning of our journey. Soon we'll dive into how those tiny castles taught sums and how moral tales unfolded through toy figurines. But for now, breathe in the stillness, savor the faint metallic scent, and imagine yourself a Victorian child on the cusp of discovery, all without leaving your bedroom. You shift in your seat as a distant church bell tolls 3 times its hollow tone, echoing through the lace-draped windows of the Victorian parlor. You lean forward, fingertips brushing the delicate fringe of a penny tin tea set arranged on a velvet footstool, a Sunday ritual that feels as comforting as your favorite blanket. In that soft golden light, you replay the Grand Jubilee picnic of 1856 in your mind, when Queen Victoria herself presided over familial manners in Greenwich Park, turning etiquette into a national pastime. Now it's your turn. You cradle a tiny teapot, its painted roses chipped from countless pretend pores, and practice the gentle bend of your wrist that marks a proper curtsy. You probably won't survive trying that curtsy in today's jeans, but here, in the hush of the parlor, you glide into polite perfection. The aroma of boiled prunes simmers in the air thanks to Aunt Matilda's leftovers warming on the stove, and you can almost taste the sticky sweetness. Beneath your slippers, the oriental rug breathes a soft sigh, threads whispering tales of distant looms. Your father, top hat tilted at a jaunty angle, instructs you to pass the tin sugar bowl without clanking its lid a lesson in restraint that beats any clickbait warning on your modern feeds. With every measured move you learn that saying, "May I with sincerity matters more than mastering cursive, although between you and me, those copper plate letters in your school copybook still look like drunken caterpillars. In the corner, Mother nods approval as you bow slightly and say, "Thank you kindly," her lace cuffs fluttering like the wings of a demure butterfly. It's a scene plucked straight from Robert Rakes's first Sunday school gathering in Gloucester, back in 1780, where children learned scripture and civility in one tidy afternoon session. Historians still debate whether Rakes's schools or penny toys did more to civilize rambunctious youngsters, but here today, penny toys are the unsung MVPs of etiquette training. You can almost hear Rakes's quills scratching out notes on child behavior, wondering if that tiny tin duck might quack lessons into eager ears. A mischievous flicker crosses your mind. What if you let that little duck topple off the table? You imagine it clattering against the polished mahogany, echoing through the still room and earning you a stern glare from the governess. Yet the doll-sized teacups and plates aren't just props for stern rehearsal. They are the stage for empathy, teaching you to anticipate a guest's needs before they even voice them. You rest your thumb on the rim of a miniature saucer and feel the pride of mastering small kindnesses. After all, politeness is like a soft fan breeze barely noticed when it's gentle, but sorely missed when it's gone. Between sips of imaginary Earl Grey, your toes curl in the thick carpet, and you notice the faint scent of lavender sachets tucked behind heavy drapery, an ever-present reminder that hygiene and decorum go hand in glove. Some families even used penny tin soap molds as teaching aids, praising children who could lather a bar into perfect peaks of foam ready for inspection. Strange fact, a few of these molds were embossed with tiny morality verses so children could recite good conduct while washing up, though nobody ever managed more than 2 lines before the soap suds swallowed the words. Your governess glides forward to demonstrate proper posture back as straight as a newly minted railroad tie. She picks up a miniature fork fashioned from thin brass, the kind sold by street vendors near London Bridge, and shows you how to spear an imaginary plum pudding without making a mess. You try to mimic her grace, but can't help thinking how much easier it would be to just swipe that pudding off a Spice Girls t-shirt in one smooth motion. Light sarcasm ticks through your thoughts as you practice each delicate rotation of the wrist. Outside, you catch the faint hum of a passing omnibus wheels rumbling like a low orchestral drone, and you're reminded of how penny toys made their way from factory floors to front parlors in a single day. That brisk logistics network is a distant cousin of today's same-day delivery, except without the drone cameras and tracking apps. Back then, parents would tuck newly acquired penny toys into satin-lined boxes before the afternoon service, then unveil them like spring blooms once the last hymn faded. Few realize that some of those boxes contained secret compartments for storing mischievous notes, early Victorian removed from classroom memes, if you will. By the time Mother gently ushers you to stand, you've mastered the art of receiving compliments, deflecting praise with a humble shake of the head and a whispered, "Oh, I'm sure it was nothing." It feels like a superpower. You can dodge admiration faster than a modern influencer sidesteps a heated Twitter thread. Historians still debate whether penny toys trained children to genuinely care for others or simply taught them to perform kindness for social applause, but you can't argue with the twinkle in your grandmother's eye when you pass that tiny sugar sack without asking. As the day's light softens, casting elongated shadows across the polished floorboards, you tuck the penny set away into a velvet pouch, each piece nestling together like old friends. You inhale the last wisp of lavender and prune steam, savoring the cozy hush that only a Sunday parlor can deliver. In that gentle cocoon of manners and miniatures, you've learned more than pleasantries. You've discovered that true education often comes wrapped in the tiniest packages, one polite gesture at a time. Soon we'll move from tea time etiquette into the bustling factories that birth these toys. But for now, let the calm settle in your bones like a warm afternoon nap. You lean closer to the miniature storefront display, the scent of fresh tin and oil paint mingling in the air like the promise of something new. And imagine the roar of steam engines chugging through Manchester in the 1840s, when Britain's factories hummed louder than festival crowds at Hyde Park speaking events. Your fingers brush over a row of penny toy soldiers still lined up for inspection, and you can almost hear the clatter of metal presses stamping each piece out with machine-like precision. In the heart of the Industrial Revolution, factories in towns like Birmingham and Nuremberg pivoted from making simple household goods to churning out vast quantities of these tiny treasures, as if every press and lathe conspired to spit out a new generation of educators in toy form. You imagine standing in that factory hall, the air thick with the hiss of steam valves and the tang of hot metal so close you'd swear you could feel the warmth radiating off the assembly lines. Workers in leather aprons moved with surprising grace, their soot-smudged faces lit by the glow of molten metal. Strange fact, some craftsmen added a pinch of ground glass to the paint mix, supposedly to give toys a glossy finish, though it meant kids sometimes ended up with tiny, shiny cuts if they handled their lead soldiers too enthusiastically. You probably won't survive poking around in that gritty environment in your modern attire, but back then families depended on every penny toy that emerged from those roaring workshops. By midday, overflowing carts of stamped tin figurines jostled along cobblestone streets toward bustling markets where street vendors hawked them from wooden stalls with whistles that could cut through a cathedral service. The 1855 Paris Exposition saw the first international showcase of penny toys, where vendors dazzled visitors with rotating wind-up birds that flapped their tin wings, a spectacle that rivaled even the hot air balloon demonstrations floating over the Seine. Historians still debate whether these expositions did more to popularize penny toys abroad or simply created a fad that fizzled once the crowds moved on. But there's no denying that by the late Victorian era, you could find a penny toy in almost every market from Calcutta to Cape Town. In your hand, the toys feel strangely significant, as if they carry the weight of thousands of toddler giggles and parental hopes. You might compare that to the unboxing frenzy of today's viral toy reveals, except here there's no YouTube thumbnail to click, just the real tinny jingle of coins exchanged at a doorstep. It's as authentic as it gets, a child's handshake agreement sealed with a copper coin, and sometimes if they were daring a promise to swap tradesies before dark. Few people know that some street vendors discreetly punched holes at the base of certain popular toys so they could string them together into Garland's early toy necklaces that doubled as makeshift crowd control tools when peddlers shepherded children toward the exits at closing time. You shuffle the toys into a neat line on your desk, the metal clicking softly like a calm metronome, and picture the intricate supply chains humming beneath Victorian society. Railways delivered raw tin from Cornwall mines to foundries, while canals carried painted toys to inland market towns long before any drone thought about buzzing overhead. The logistics was so elaborate that some entrepreneurs wrote extensive letters to their suppliers in elegant copperplate handwriting, negotiating color mixes and batch sizes with an attention to detail that would make today's procurement managers nod in respect. Yet, unlike modern corporate memos, these letters sometimes carried doodles of the toys themselves, sketched in margins as informal visual specs. A puff of air from your fan rattles the window panes, and you think of those factory designers huddled around, drafting tables, sketching new toy models, inspired by major events like the 1859 laying of the first transatlantic cable, which spawned teeny tin telegraph machines complete with miniature wires. Historians still debate whether these novelty toys actually taught children about the marvels of communication technology, or simply served as quirky desk ornaments. But either way, their existence underscores the era's fascination with progress. You grin at the thought it's like a Victorian TED Talk, but you can hold the main exhibit in your palm. Your eyes travel across the display to a stack of penny toy books, fold-out accordion-style pamphlets printed on cheap paper, illustrated with colored engravings demonstrating proper play. They were the factory's marketing miracle handed out free with every purchase to ensure children knew exactly how to use their learning tools. Inside, you'd find mini lessons on counting geography and even rudimentary foreign languages, all tied to the shapes and colors of the toys themselves. It's a little like today's app-based tutorials, except these leaflets smelled faintly of ink and leather binding, and you risked paper cuts if you flipped too eagerly. You pick up a chipped tin locomotive, its little wheels still intact, and imagine it steaming along those iron rails for real spewing puffs of white smoke that drawn the eyes of every child who saw it glide by. These toys weren't just playthings, they were tokens of an empire on the move, celebrating Britain's global reach and engineering prowess. Evidence suggests that some factory owners commissioned special editions featuring colonial flags or exotic animals, hoping to entice Tweety explorers and Sunday school teachers alike. Few realize that a handful of these limited runs escaped the catalogs and ended up sitting in dusty attic trunks for over a century, silent time capsules waiting for eager collectors. As you line the locomotive beside a row of penny animal figures, a rabbit, a pig, and a rooster, you feel the thrill of assembly line production, but also the creativity that sprung from it. Each toy carried a hint of the designer's personality, a too wide ear here, an extra long beak there, little imperfections that made every piece unique. You might liken it to artisanal craft beers compared to mass-market soda, except the foam never appears and you get a bonus of extreme metal shard hazard with each item. With a gentle exhale, you lean back and regard your miniature market scene, a factory in one corner, a railway track sketched on parchment unfurled nearby, and a bustling marketplace of stitched linen tents and wooden stalls. It feels alive, like you could coax the tiny tin crowd into motion with the softest breeze. In that moment, you appreciate the journey from raw tin ingot to educational plaything, a journey as complex and interwoven as any modern product launch. Soon, we'll pivot from these marketplaces into the classrooms and parlors where these toys truly found their purpose. But for now, relish the quiet clatter of history's smallest industry and ponder, this could today's screen-based learning ever feel as tangible as the cold, weighty promise of a penny toy resting in your hand? You settle into your chair again, the patina of the wooden armrest warm beneath your fingertips, and you lift a tiny letter, a block painted in primary red, blue, and yellow, though the edges are worn from decades of curious hands. You can almost hear the distant murmur of children in a classroom at the 1870 opening of the University of London's new lecture halls, where the first formal education of women was heralded as a triumph. It's as if that historic shift in learning hangs in the air around you, whispering, "Yes, little one, you belong here too." You press the block to your ear, no echo, but a faint metallic ring reminds you that this is no ordinary toy. The scent of old pine drifts upward, carried from the toy chest that holds this miniature alphabet set. You lift the next block, a bee, with a tiny painted bee buzzing in the corner. You tap it on the coffee table's smooth surface, and the soft plunk feels deeply satisfying, like the moment your phone finally connects to Wi-Fi. You might laugh at the comparison, but imagine a time when the only buzzing came from real insects, and the only connection you needed was between letter and sound. You trace each letter with your thumb C, with its curled crescent moon D, sporting a dainty duck. These engraved motifs weren't just decorative, they were mnemonic aids meant to link shapes with concepts in a kind of Victorian flashcard system. Historians still debate whether children learned more from these tactile toys or from rote recitation in musty schoolrooms. But there's no denying that a child turning a block from Z to A felt a thrill akin to today's level-up chime in a video game. You drag the E block across the table, listening to it scrape like fingernails on slate, mildly unpleasant, but oddly grounding. You imagine that first slate pencil scritching out the letter E in a classroom in 1882, students hunched over their desks in pursuit of penmanship perfection. Few realize that some Victorian teachers banned colorful blocks entirely, insisting that black and white slates built character through suffering, though few children could tell the difference between moral fortitude and outright boredom. The room feels alive as you stack 3 blocks, F, G, and H, into a miniature tower. They wobble like a tiny Jenga game, each cube a precarious step in learning phonics. You might compare it to building a career ladder today, each rung requiring steady hands and nerves of steel, except here your only hazard is letting the tower tumble and waking the cat from her nap. You whisper a gentle apology to your feline roommate as the blocks clatter down each tiny thud, echoing through the parlor like a minor punctuation mark. Under the glow of the gas lamp, The blocks reveal subtle imperfections. A smudge of cobalt blue, a chip missing from the K, a brush of gold paint where it doesn't belong. Those little flaws are like the scribbled marginalia in a beloved book signs of use proof of past discovery. You recall reading about a rare Victorian alphabet set once owned by a suffragette, each block inscribed with secret rallying cries, beneath the painted surface a clandestine code of empowerment hidden beneath innocent letters. You lift the M block, its bold serif edges standing out against the softer curves of its neighbors. It feels sturdy, reassuring, like the spine of a well-loved novel or the promise of a reliable Wi-Fi signal. But there's more to these blocks than meets the eye beneath the paint. Some were cast in lead alloys that we know now to be dangerously toxic, though educators of the time praised their heft and durability. You probably won't survive a mouthful of lead alphabet soup, but the memory lingers. Learning was considered worth the risk back then. As you align N, O, and P on the edge of the table, you're reminded of the first penny toy spelling bee held in a London schoolyard, circa 1888. Children would race to arrange blocks into words like home or hope, their laughter outpacing the church bells overhead. Strange fact, one enthusiastic student accidentally spelled M-O-P instead of Pa-P, causing quite the giggle fit that reportedly interrupted the proceedings long enough for the headmistress to lose her place in the hymn book. You lean back and pinch Q between thumb and forefinger, appreciating the tail of its serif like an elegant flourish on a handwritten letter. It's a small triumph to see that quirky curvature captured in cast metal. You might think of today's designers crafting fonts on screens, but here in your palm, you hold the original prototype of typographic experimentation. Historians still debate whether these blocks influenced printed typefaces of the era or simply mimicked them, but for you the distinction feels less important than the tactile joy of holding each shape. The R, S, and T blocks form the final row, their paint slightly brighter, perhaps replaced during a later restoration, or maybe belonging to a sibling set handed down through generations. You count them on your breath. 1, 2, 3. 8 letters left to complete the set. Each block represents not just a letter, but a step toward literacy, a bridge between the gibberish of early Babel and the grand Victorian novels that awaited you on your parents' bookshelf. You feel the breeze from your fan stir the edges of the tablecloth, sending a whisper of movement across the blocks. It's like watching letters dance on a page, inviting you to string them together into words, sentences, stories. This was slow, deliberate learning, no instant search bar to fill your head with definitions. You had to earn each syllable, stacking block upon block until meaning emerged. Finally, you complete the set with Y and Z, the Z sliding into place with a tiny victorious click. You hold the full alphabet before you, a miniature rainbow of knowledge, and you understand why Victorian parents prized these penny toys as educational gold. They were more than distractions. They were portals to worlds of words awaiting the curious explorer in every child. With a contented sigh, you gather the alphabet blocks and tuck them into their velvet-lined box, the scent of pine and old paint lingering like a promise of tomorrow's discovery. You press your palm over the lid, feeling the smooth wood grain beneath your skin, and let the gentle hush of the parlor wrap around you once more. Soon we'll count castles and conquer sums with miniature fortresses, but for now, savor the weight of letters in your hand and the patient delight of learning one block at a time. You pick up a tiny penny tin castle, its turrets barely big enough to host a garden gnome's tea party, and you feel the cool metal press into your palm. Remember how the alphabet blocks felt heavier. Like carrying an entire book in one hand, the paint is a soft moss green fleck where decades of eager fingers have rubbed it away, revealing the shiny tin beneath. You run your thumbnail over the crenellations, each little notch, whispering tales of miniature sieges and princess rescues. The faint scent of beeswax polish drifts from the sideboard, mingling with the ghost of lavender sachets, an aroma that somehow makes arithmetic feel as cozy as a cashmere blanket. You probably won't survive building a real castle with your bare hands today, but here, these pint-sized fortresses stand as your battleground for sums and subtractions. In your mind's eye, you're transported to 1870, when the Elementary Education Act first promised schooling for every Victorian child. You imagine a classroom where solemn rows of desks replaced the Sunday parlor games, yet penny tin castles snuck in through the windows like cheeky revolutionaries. Teachers would toss these castles onto the desks and challenge you to calculate the number of turrets versus the total number of windows, an exercise more exciting than any dry arithmetic workbook. Historians still debate whether these castle toys actually improved numeracy or simply entertained restless children while parents sipped their Darjeeling in peace. But you can't argue with the sparkle in a child's eye when they discovered that 4 turrets plus 6 windows equals 10 math points towards snack time. You set the castle on the oak table, its reflection shimmering under the gas lamp like a playtime supermodel, and begin your first lesson addition. 2 drawbridges here, 3 arrow slits there. How many openings in total? You tap the roof with a gentle flick, and it emits a soft plink that feels as satisfying as hitting send on a perfectly worded email. It's almost as addictive as modern smartphone notifications, but without the dopamine crash an hour later. You line up tiny tin soldiers at the base, counting each 1, 2, 3, and place them in front of the castle gate. Next, you shuffle in a pair of minot horses, 4, 5, and cheer internally when you get to 6, patting yourself on the back like you've just scored a level up in Candy Crush without spending any gold bars. Strange fact, some of these castles concealed secret sliders that revealed hidden numbers etched beneath the moat, early Victorian cheat codes for arithmetic, if you will. A quick nudge of a concealed latch could turn your 2 towers into 3 or your 5 windows into 8, depending on how mischievous you felt. You chuckle at the thought of tiny children scheming behind their mother's lace curtains, practicing mental math while pretending to adjust the castle's architecture. Modern board games might guilt you into buying expansion packs, but these penny toys delivered all the add-ons for free, plus an extra shard of tin for good measure, should you drop one on the floor. Your governess sweeps past the ruffle of her skirt, whispering like parchment pages turning, and she tasks you with subtraction. If 3 knights leave to patrol, how many remain defending the castle? You crouch beside the footstool, the pile of castles softly shifting under your elbow, and slide 3 tin knights away. 6 minus 3 equals 3. You declare proudly as if announcing the winner of a royal joust. You might compare this to today's viral mental math challenges on TikTok, fast, flashy, and begging for a hashtag. But here, the pace is deliberate, the tension building with each careful nudge of metal against metal. Jesus, this feels more dramatic than buffering a video on your Wi-Fi, you think. With a smirk, you probably won't survive that slow loading screen either, but at least you're spared the spinning wheel of death. You close your eyes, breathe in the warm hum of the fan, and imagine guiding a young Victorian mind to grasp multiplication by counting rows of arrow slits. 3 rows of 4 slits make 12 openings. You murmur, stacking the castle's walls like layers of a medieval birthday cake. Evidently, some children advance so quickly that teachers hosted informal castle math tournaments in the schoolyard, cheering on students as they solved problems faster than a steam train could barrel down the rails. Between calculations, you notice a small dent on the castle's side, a souvenir from the time an older brother thought it'd be hilarious to test its defense against a marble. Instead of a sturdy fortress, it crumpled like a soda can underfoot, teaching kids a hard-earned lesson in structural integrity and humility. Few people know that those dents became prized battle scars, with children comparing whose castle had the most heroic indentations. It's like your modern friends sharing scraped iPhones as badges of honor. They might cry over a cracked screen, but deep down, they love the story it tells. Finally, you arrange the castles in a neat row, 5 in total, and challenge yourself to a multiplication exercise. 5 castles times 4 drawbridges each equals 20 bridges. You whisper the answer, then tip your head, as if you've just completed a royal decree. The 10 pieces click together in a rhythm that feels as purposeful as the tick of a Swiss watch. A final tally on a scrap of parchment confirms your result, and you lean back with the pride of a conquering general, though you're barely high enough to reach the armrest. As the candle's flame dwindles, casting flickering shadows across your miniature fortress line, you gather each castle and press them gently into a velvet pouch, one by one by one. You breathe deeply, tasting the faint tang of metal and old varnish, and feel that familiar glow of small achievements. Soon we'll step away from sums and centenals to explore how toy figurines told moral tales. But for now, let the hush of counted castles settle around you like a soft blanket and savor the simple triumph of arithmetic mastery in miniature. You settle back into your chair, the soft hum of your fan mixing with the faint crackle of a nearby candle, and you cradle a tiny penny tin figurine depicting the Good Samaritan, his outstretched arm as delicate as a silk ribbon in your fingertips. The faint tang of metal paint tickles your nose, layered over the sweet scent of beeswax polish still lingering on the sideboard. You probably won't survive a real Samaritan rescue without texting 911 first. But here, this little tin figure teaches you how compassion was once the currency of kindness. Remember that bent tin horse from our flea market dig in Section 3. This Good Samaritan is just as full of surprising quirks. He wears a painted sash so thin that some kids thought it was a stray spider's web. Staring at his outstretched hand, You drift back to the winter of 1843 when Charles Dickens published A Christmas Carol, and moral storytelling swept through parlors faster than a runaway coach. In living rooms, aglow with gaslight, families gathered around reading aloud only to find themselves reaching for penny toy figurines to act out Scrooge's transformation from miser to magnanimous host. You can almost hear the clink of tin bells as the spirit of Christmas yet to come looms over a line of miniature carolers. Historians still debate whether these figurines or the chapbooks did more to instill Victorian values, but there's no question that children learned the power of goodwill, often through reenactment that felt more real than any chalkboard lecture. You trace the contour of the Samaritan's cloak, noting a tiny smudge of cobalt blue, a remnant of a batch that went slightly off shade when a distracted painter sneezed into his palette. Few people know that some penny tin figures hide microscopic inscriptions on their undersides, maxims like, "Bear ye one another's burden so faint, you need a magnifying glass to read them." Imagine discovering one of these in a dusty attic sunlight, glinting off the tin as you puzzle over a message lost to time. It's like uncovering a secret in a modern video game, except here you're rewarded with moral instruction, not a rare loot drop. Your fingertips brush against the figurine's base, and you catch the echo of children's laughter from a long-ago Sunday school in 1856 when the Royal Jubilee Picnic in Greenwich Park hosted a penny toy pageant that blended entertainment with ethics. Victorian children reenacted the Good Samaritan story right on the grass, swapping out tin figures after each act like an early version of a cosplay convention, minus the cosplay and the convention center. You inhale deeply, tasting the faint hint of lavender sachets mixed with fresh grass. It feels as immersive as a nature vlog, but without the shaky camera work. Sliding the Samaritan aside, you pick up a tiny Noah's Ark, set 2 by 2 faithful little animals waiting to board the rickety deck. The wood grain paint is so convincing you almost feel the scent of cedar, though it's really just layers of enamel over tin. You line up a pair of stamped elephants and whisper 2 by 2 like a mantra, each repetition grounding you in lessons of stewardship and survival. Strange fact, a handful of these arks were cast with hidden rivets so kids could detach the animals and swap them with extras from rival toy sets, an early form of modding that delighted crafty youngsters. As the candle flickers, you feel the hush of the room deepen, and you're reminded of that tin alphabet block with the gold fleck from Section 4, another learning toy that taught letters through play. Here, figurines convey stories of virtue, the widow's mite told by a miniature widow holding a tiny copper coin, or the prodigal son's return dramatized by 2 figures hugging in midair. You compare it to watching a morality play on YouTube, except you're the one conducting the drama with your fingertips, and there are no autoplay ads to spoil the moment. Your governess from childhood would have approved of this hands-on storytelling. In 1870, when the Education Act declared schooling compulsory, teachers adapted these figurines for classroom use, arranging them on felt mats to illustrate Bible verses. You might think modern classrooms use tablets to teach ethics, but Victorian school halls use nothing but scarves of wool and tin figures to engage young minds. Historians still debate whether such dramatizations actually deepened moral understanding or merely served as a diversion from reading Dickens aloud. But watching those little scenes play out must have felt as riveting as binge-watching a mini-series on Netflix. You run a fingertip along the brim of a miniature pilgrim's hat, part of a figurine depicting the 1620 Plymouth Landing story. The paint is slightly matte there, as if someone attempted a rushed restoration decades ago. Few realize that during colonial-themed tea parties, children would stage elaborate reenactments of the Mayflower voyage, complete with cardboard waves drawn on paper backdrops. It was interactive history class before interactive screens made waves literally. You crack a brief joke to yourself, I'd pay extra for VR that smells like salt spray and crushed tin. Setting that figurine down, you stroke the edge of a tiny moral tableau, a small family scene where a child hands charity to a beggar. The beggar's cloak has a chip as though it once rode over a marble and tumbled into the gutter, literal evidence of hard-earned empathy. You whisper to the toy, "You're braver than I am," when I accidentally text my ex, feeling that soft sarcasm tickle your spine. Then you reposition the figures to reenact a debate on generosity, nodding along as if you're hosting a TED Talk of Victorian proportions. By now, the hush of the parlor has settled into a gentle lull, but your mind buzzes with the vibrancy of these moral miniatures. You imagine a modern kid swiping through a morality app, scrolling past colorful icons, and wonder if anything feels as tangible as holding a tiny tin hero who once taught you virtues through embossed slogans. It's a lesson in patience and tactile discovery, a stark contrast to the instant gratification of today's clickbait ethics quizzes. As you return each figurine to its velvet-lined box, you reflect on how penny toys managed to weave lessons into play crafting, a kind of silent storytelling that resonated long after candlelight faded. The slight weight of each piece felt like a whisper on your palm, reminding you that even the smallest gestures carry immense meaning. In a world obsessed with pixels and screens, these tin tales remind you that morals can be learned one metal character at a time. Soon, we'll turn from moral tales to global geography with tiny landmarks spreading across tabletop maps. But for now, take a deep breath and let the echo of those embossed maxims, hidden though they may be, settle in your heart. After all, sometimes the most profound lessons come in the smallest packages. You lean back in your chair, the soft buzz of the fan mixing with the distant click of your heating grate, and pick up a miniature Big Ben, its tiny clock face painted in painstaking detail hands, frozen at 6:20. The wood grain of the side table feels smooth under your elbow, like the well-worn surface of an explorer's desk, and the faint aroma of old pine drifts from the toy cabinet. You run your thumb along the spire and imagine the Grand Berlin Conference of 1884-85, when European powers carved up Africa with as much precision as you now place these landmarks on your felt map. Back then, geography lessons were less draw your own map and more, here's a tin pyramid. Learn to locate Khartoum, and you can almost hear the echo of heavy debates bouncing off palace walls. Historians still debate whether penny toy landmarks taught children genuine world knowledge or simply drilled imperial pride into tiny heads, and whether those lessons still resonate with today's armchair travelers. You set Big Ben beside a squat golden tin pyramid representing ancient Egypt, its sides just sharp enough to catch the light in soft glints. The scent of wax polish lingers as you trace the pyramid's base, imagining the opening of the Suez Canal in 1869, the waterway that linked two oceans and forever altered global trade routes. Strange fact, some toy pyramids hid tiny functional compasses in their hollow bases, so a curious child could pretend to navigate the desert sands, though half the time the needle stuck at northish and sent 10 explorers careening into imaginary quicksand. You giggle at how this compares to today's GPS. Back then, you dared to fling a toy across your bedroom and still somehow find your way home. Next, you arrange a petite painted tin Eiffel Tower, its latticework so fine you can almost count each rivet. You breathe in the faint whiff of metal paint tinted with just enough lead to make the tower feel weighty in your palm. You picture the 1889 Exposition Universelle in Paris, when the real Eiffel Tower towered above the city like a steel giant, drawing crowds that marveled at the world's tallest structure. You recall reading that some penny toy manufacturers experimented with radium-infused paint to make their miniatures glow in the dark, a luminous marvel that quickly fell out of favor once curious hands discovered glow meant etch a low-level radiation burn. Historians still debate whether those radioactive souvenirs were gimmicks that thrilled Victorian thrill-seekers or regrettable missteps in toy safety. The felt map beneath your toys feels soft and warm, the fibers whispering under each placement like a quiet carpet of moss. You pick up a tiny tin copy of the Sydney Opera House, anachronistic, yes, but part of a later series that included modern wonders to teach children about the far-flung corners of the empire. You place it next to a miniature Mount Fuji, its white sprayed peak, a stark contrast to the deep green enamel of adjacent toy forests. It's like pinning digital icons on Google Earth, except here your fingertips are the only cursor you need. Strange fact, a few toy sets included flapping tin kangaroos that would hop when you tilted the map. The mechanism was so rudimentary, it looked like your map was convulsing under a sudden earthquake. As you step back to admire your tabletop atlas, the hush of the parlor deepens, enveloping you in candlelit nostalgia. You run your finger along the coastlines of Asia, the metal cool against your skin, and imagine the first Ordnance Survey maps printed in 1801, so detailed that surveyors measured trench depths and hedgerow heights far more granular than any toy. Some enterprising children cut tiny snippets of these survey sheets to paste behind their penny toys, creating bespoke map corridors for tin caravans to traverse. You probably won't survive cutting paper in half with your eyes closed today, but back then, scissors and glue were the DIY tools of geography education. You gather up your landmarks and align them in a sweeping U-shape from Cairo's pyramids through London's Big Ben across to Paris's Iron Lattice and onward to Tokyo's Fuji. The candles flicker, casting soft shadows like migrating birds across your desk, and you feel that quiet thrill of holding the world in your palm. No autoplay ads, no infinite scroll, just you, a handful of tin icons, and the vast landscapes they conjure. Soon we'll delve into penny toy microscopes and the science lessons they inspired, but for now, breathe in the warm hush of distant lands and savor the tactile magic of learning geography, one tiny monument at a time. You settle back into your chair, the gentle whir of your fan blending with the soft creak of the floorboards, and lift a penny tin microscope from its velvet cradle, its brass tube cool and surprisingly weighty in your palm. The faint scent of old metal mingles with the lingering aroma of beeswax polish on your sideboard, while the muted hum of the room feels as soothing as a lullaby. You probably won't survive peering at pond scum through a century-old lens without modern eye protection. But here, in the hush of your parlor, this tiny scientific marvel invites you to glimpse worlds unseen. You adjust the focus knob, its knurled edge rough under your fingertip, and catch a glimmer of candlelight on the polished lens. In that flicker, you're transported to November 24th, 1859, when Charles Darwin's On the Origin of Species shook the world and sent naturalists hunting through hedgerows for specimens to classify. Victorian children, inspired by such grand scientific upheaval, pressed drops of pond water onto glass slides and peered into microcosms teeming with life-bacterial ballet you'd never witness with your naked eye. Historians still debate whether these penny toy microscopes kindled lifelong curiosity or simply became dusty knickknacks on mantelpieces. But for one night, they turned a damp speck into an entire ecosystem at your fingertips. You lean closer, the soft rustle of your slippers on carpet, the only sound aside from the fan, and place a prepared slide beneath the brass stage. The microscope's base trembles ever so slightly soothing, like a distant purr, and you twist the focus until a fragment of leaf material snaps into definition. Tiny green chloroplasts drift across the field of view, shimmering like microscopic lanterns. Strange fact, some of these penny toy microscopes came with built-in razors, so young scientists could slice specimens thin enough to fit under the lens, an oddly risky accessory, reminiscent of finding a sharp nail in a modern toy chest. The room's atmosphere thickens with anticipation as you adjust the mirror beneath, angling a sliver of candlelight through the slide. You can almost hear the echo of Michael Faraday's 1825 Royal Institution Christmas lecture, where he demonstrated the magic of optical illusions and inspired generations to tinker with lenses and prisms. In those hallowed halls, simple experiments captivated audiences in a way that rivaled today's viral science demos, only without the clickbait thumbnails and autoplay ads. As you catch that slender ray of light, you feel the same crackle of discovery, as if the tiny specks drifting before you hold secrets to the very fabric of life. Your fingertips graze the microscope's coarse focus wheel again, and you picture a clammy schoolroom in 1875 where eager pupils traded slides of insect wings and crushed flower petals like rare trading cards. A popular lesson involved examining the crystalline structure of sugar-tiny hexagons that looked like a dew-dropped honeycomb. You might chuckle at how modern kids snack on sugar while gaming, oblivious to its complex geometry under magnification. Back then, each hexagon felt like a miniature cathedral, proof that beauty hides in the smallest corners of nature. You twist the stage-swapping slides until you find a bit of pondweed-tangled filaments that dance under the lens like sea anemones in a forgotten tide pool. The delicate green tendrils reminds you of how in 1887 the British Association for the Advancement of Science held a microscope exhibit in Edinburgh, where even the noblest ladies donned spectacles to inspect water fleas. Few realize that some exhibitors secretly tinted their slides with dyes and early Instagram filter for microbes to make them more photogenic for drawing rooms. It may not have been strictly scientific, but it sure made viewers gasp with delight. A soft cough escapes you as you switch off the mirror's light, letting the lens rest in shadow. You tip the microscope to one side, examining its underside where a tiny engraving reads, "Made in Nuremberg." It's a reminder that these toys were at the intersection of craftsmanship and industry hand-tuned lenses fitted into mass-produced tin bodies. Strange fact, some craftsmen accidentally ground the lenses slightly off-axis, gifting owners a subtle kaleidoscopic effect. Whenever they peered through an unintended party trick that had children giggling as bacteria bloomed in rainbow halos. You place the microscope back on the velvet pad and run a fingertip along its smooth edge, savoring the cold contrast against your warm skin. The faint scent of lavender sachets drifts in as if the room itself encourages you to unwind while revealing nature's tiniest wonders. It's ASMR therapy for the mind, no algorithm needed to suggest the next calming video. Just you, your senses, and the silent thrill of discovery. Your mind wanders to the curriculum reforms of 1870 when the Elementary Education Act encouraged schools to introduce basic science lessons. Penny toy microscopes became clandestine tools of inquiry smuggled into classrooms to spark hands-on learning. Instead of listening to droning lectures on botanical classifications, children examined pollen grains and protozoa, first-hand feeling like junior Darwinian explorers charting new territories. Historians still debate whether these toys disrupted formal teaching or subtly enhanced it. But for a growing generation, they blurred the line between play and scholarship. You take a slow breath and glance around the parlor, a row of alphabet blocks from Section 4, Castle Toys from Section 5, Moral Figurines from Section 6. And now, this tiny microscope resting among them. The convergence of playthings forms a silent syllabus, a curriculum of curiosity sculpted in tin and paint. It's cohesive as any lesson plan, yet far more enchanting than flicking through digital flashcards. As the candle flame gutter bends, casting dancing shadows across the microscope's body, you realize that this unassuming toy bridged worlds the vastness of Victorian industry and the infinitesimal realms of microbes. A single twist of the focus wheel brought living organisms into view, igniting a spark that connected imagination to observation. You tap the brass tube gently, as if applauding yourself for peeking into life's hidden layers. Finally, you cover the stage, wrap the lens in soft cloth, and lower the microscope into its protective box. The hush of the room feels deeper now, enriched by the echo of tiny discoveries and the promise of more to come. Soon, we'll don penny toy hats and march toy soldiers across parlor battlefields, but for this moment, let the glitter of microbial worlds settle in your mind like stardust. Breathe in the quiet, savor the metallic tang, and remember, even the smallest lens can expand your universe. You lean forward, inhaling the faint scent of beeswax and old velvet as you lift the lid off a miniature penny tin puppet theater, a tiny stage framed by red painted columns and a faded gold proscenium that gleams like a long forgotten spotlight. The velvet curtains part with a soft sigh as you slide the tiny puppet sticks into place, and you can almost hear the murmur of an expectant Victorian audience gathered for a night of marionette magic. You probably won't survive attempting full-body puppetry in today's living room. Your cats would stage a coup. But here with these penny toys, you become both director and performer in a world where empathy is learned one string tug at a time. You set the little figures on stage, a painted tin lady in a hoop skirt, her porcelain cheeks rosy with surprise, and a gallant tin gentleman bowing low, hat in hand. As you whisper their first lines, you're transported to 1869, when the Royal Academy of Dramatic Art first opened its grand doors, and London's theater scene flourished as a place for both high society and street performers to share tales of love, loss, and redemption. These miniature penny theaters brought that grandeur into parlors across Britain. No ticket required, just a humble penny and an appetite for storytelling. The rasp of tin on tin as you maneuver the puppets feels oddly intimate, like fingertips brushing across a piano's ivory keys. With each careful movement, you inhabit these characters, feeling their hopes and fears as if they were your own, which is precisely the point through role play Victorian children practiced empathy before the term even existed. Strange fact, some puppet figures had removable masks painted on both sides, one smiling, one stern, so children could explore changing emotions in mid-performance, a primitive form of mood swapping that would make any modern emoji app jealous. You tap the stage floor with your finger to signal a scene change, and it clatters softly like distant applause from an invisible crowd. The room's hush deepens, save for the fan's gentle hum, and you imagine families seated around the performance area on plush ottomans, sipping weak tea and nibbling on shortbread as they watch their youngsters enact Dickensian dramas. Historians still debate whether these penny theater performances deepen children's understanding of classic literature or simply served as glorified puppet shows that let parents enjoy unspoken naps. But you can't argue with the gleeful gasps of a well-executed plot twist. You shift a figurine's arm to gesture toward a painted cardboard backdrop of the Thames, its stenciled ripples catching the light in a way that feels surprisingly lifelike. You breathe in the scent of old pine from the side table and imagine the fog rolling off the river in the play's opening scene, a sensory detail you'd never capture in a modern streaming service. You quip to yourself that you'd pay extra for Netflix to smell like damp stone and fresh iron, but for now, this tin stage suffices. As the narrative unfolds, you guide your puppets through tales of heroic rescues during the 1854 Broad Street cholera outbreak, dramatizing Dr. John Snow's groundbreaking work, tracing the source to a contaminated water pump. You lean so close that your nose nearly grazes the stage, and you can almost taste the stale, muggy air of a Soho alley. Strange fact, some penny theaters included miniature removable water pumps that children could turn complete with a tiny drip of clear resin to mimic water. Early interactive props that blurred the lines between play and pedagogy. You pause to swap out the backdrop for a moonlit garden scene, the paper edges slightly curled from age. The tactile sensation of sliding this piece into the back wall is strangely satisfying, like clicking the perfect playlist intro on your favorite music app. You might chuckle at how today's kids skip ads before songs. But here, each scene shift came with the ceremony of unfastening two tiny brass clips, no digital bar to swipe, just pure unhurried ritual. With the garden set, you launch into a moral vignette, two puppets representing charity and greed, each approach a beggar at the stage's edge. The contrasting pastel and charcoal hues on their tin coats highlight lessons of giving and restraint. Your voice softens as you narrate charity's gentle offering, and you feel the weight of empathy settle in your chest like a warm quilt. You whisper, "Remember that time you forgot your umbrella and helped that stranger get home safe?" A playful nudge that ties Victorian parable to your own modern memories. Your cat pads into the room and swats at the dangling puppet strings, eliciting a surprised squeak from both you and the figurines. You mutter a light-hearted oath. I probably won't survive your judgmental glare, Fluffers, but at least you're honest. You carefully lift the strings out of her reach, thinking how this is the kind of unfiltered feedback no social media influencer could match. As the final act draws near, you prepare your grand finale, the Penny Toy Jubilee celebrating the 1887 Golden Jubilee of Queen Victoria. You position a cast of dozens on-stage tin soldiers, miniature citizens, and a tiny tin carriage bearing a painted tin monarch. The sense of scale is breathtaking, a full cavalcade in the span of your palm. You feel the board slight wobble as you line them up like a tiny parade, and you whisper encouragements to each figure. "You've got this, Corporal Tin. Don't trip on your sword." The room seems to pulse with anticipation as you guide the procession past a cardboard arch painted to resemble Marble Arch, the audience gasping at the sight of each dignitary. Strange fact, some aristocratic families commissioned bespoke penny toy figures resembling their ancestors, complete with etched family crests and eccentric ancestor cosplay that makes today's historical reenactors look like amateurs. You smile at the thought of Lady Penelope's great-great-grandfather leading a tin brigade beneath your flickering candlelight. When the pennies have all clinked across the stage and the finale's hush settles, you carefully collect each puppet, their painted smiles gazing up at you in silent applause. You tuck the backdrop and figures back into their velvet-lined box, savoring the gentle click of metal on metal. The fans' hum seems to applaud your performance as well, its soft drone echoing your own satisfaction. You sit back and let the sensory echoes of the theater linger, the whispered rustle of tin, the scent of pine and oil paint, the warm glow of the candlelight reflecting off the tiny stage. For a moment, you feel the world contract to this parlor theater. No audience of millions. No comment sections raging below, just you and the intimate magic of role play. Soon, we'll don tin muskets and march toy soldiers across battlefields, but for now, breathe deeply. Let your heart soften, and remember that empathy can be taught one puppet string at a time. You lean forward, fingertips grazing the rim of a tiny tin drum, and lift a penny tin soldier into view, his painted plumage still vivid under the soft glow of your lamp. The gentle thump of the drum as you set it down feels as soothing as a distant heartbeat, and the faint metallic scent mingles with the warm hum of your fan. You probably won't survive storming a real trench without body armor and a playlist of motivational death metal. But here with these miniature musketeers arrayed on your table, you're the general strategy unfolding at the tip of your thumb. In your mind's eye, you're transported to October 25th, 1854, on the wind-swept heights above Balaclava, where the infamous charge of the Light Brigade thundered into legend. You place a row of cavalrymen, tiny lances poised in a straight line across a felt plain, imagining the rattling hoofbeats as they sprint toward the unseen foe. The soft clicking of tin on fabric echoes like distant applause for Tennyson's verse, and you feel that same mix of awe and dread. Strange fact, some early penny toy soldiers were cast with hollow interiors and meant to be filled with sand. For better balance, only a handful of Victorian kids remembered to seal the tiny filling hole, resulting in more than a few dusty parlor floors after enthusiastic skirmishes. You slide a miniature cannon into position, its little wheels swiveling on their axles with a whisper of movement and cushion. The metals echo with your palm to muffle the sound into a gentle thud. You might chuckle at comparing this to modern airsoft battles, except here the recoil is 100% imagination, and the only casualty is a missing tin helmet under the rug. As you align the soldiers for a flanking maneuver, you can almost hear the distant boom of cannons in the Crimea, a muffled roar that must have vibrated through Victorian drawing rooms when news of the conflict reached London. Historians still debate whether playing with these tiny armies instilled genuine tactical thinking or simply normalized the spectacle of warfare. But you can't deny the thrill of guiding your tin brigade across the battlefield. You pinch two infantrymen between thumb and forefinger one with a bayonet fixed the other, holding a rolled blanket, and place them atop a miniature ridge of folded fabric that serves as your entrenched earthwork. The fabric snap brushes softly against the tin, and you savor that tactile contrast, cool metal against plush wool, like the unexpected chill of stepping onto tile with bare feet. You pose your soldiers with precision, as though composing a living tableau for a high-definition war documentary. Only here, the only HD, is high detail in your head. Your gaze drifts to a chipped figure at the back row, a drummer boy whose painted sash is rubbed nearly smooth. Legend says Victorian families often gifted these drummer figures to only children of enlisted officers, so they could feel connected to loved ones overseas. Few realize that some families later used these drummer toys as mourning tokens, hollowing them out to keep locks of hair or scraps of correspondence inside tiny reliquaries of memory hidden beneath the paint. It's nostalgia carved in tin, heavier than any metal. You sweep your hand over the tableau, imagining that gentle breeze hinted by your fan is the same wind that tore through the Crimean trenches, carrying whiffs of smoke and salt from the Black Sea. It's a sensory bridge across time, the cool air on your skin, and the imagined sting of gunpowder in the distance. You whisper a quiet quip to yourself, I probably won't survive this frontline commentary, but at least I'm safe from shrapnel. With a soft click, You nudge a tiny general identified by his raised sword and jaunty painted plume toward the center of the field. He stands on a small tin base engraved letters called Bramwell 8T45, a name no history book ever recorded. Historians still debate whether these fictional figures sparked more imaginative campaigns or merely served as decorative shelf ornaments. But you can't argue with the way your heart flutters when you lead him into enemy territory. You arrange the cannon crew into firing formation, 2 gunners grasping the barrel and 1 lugging a pint-sized powder keg. The faint weight of the keg reminds you of the serious responsibilities real artillery crews held. But here, the only explosions are the triumphant pop of your imagination. You whisper low at your leisure in a mock serious tone and feel a soft grin curve your lips. It's a playful simulation far removed from any true battlefield, but no less meaningful for teaching the basics of sequencing and cause and effect. As you reposition your flanking infantry, your mind drifts to the Battle of Inkerman in 1854, when fog cloaked the Scottish Highlands and turned friend against foe. You tilt your felt battlefield so that a wisp of breeze from your fan sweeps across the tin ranks, mimicking that same misty confusion. A few of your soldiers, you notice, have mismatched hats, an artifact of penny toy production where paint batches sometimes ran out mid-uniform. Some kids insisted these mismatches marked undercover agents, while others used them as an excuse to swap pieces between sets, early guerrilla tactics of toy warfare. You pause to tap 2 lines of infantry into a narrow valley carved of rolled ribbon, a strategic choke point in your miniature campaign. The fabric's smooth edges cradle the tin bodies, and you feel that soft indentation under your finger as you advance. It's the kind of tactile feedback no touch screen can replicate. Each clink a note in your personal ASMR symphony. Across the field, you spot a lone figure, an officer astride a cast tin horse, its hooves molded flat so it stands upright without tipping. You remember learning that some toy horses were originally designed with real horsehair tails, a flourish that added realism until it rotted and became fly terrifying. Most factory owners quietly removed them after a spate of squeamish Victorian squeals. Now this hairless steed looks unassuming, but its simplicity makes the metal glimmer all the more. You gather your troops for a final push infantry on the ridge cavalry, sweeping from the left flank and the general leading the charge. You hold your breath as you tap the cannon's base, imagining the blowback sending tin shrapnel harmless sparks in every direction. Then you let out a soft laugh. Victory is mine, but only in the parlor. As you collect the scattered soldiers, you savor the residual warmth of metal against wool and the lingering hum of your fan like an approving murmur. These toys taught you more than just how to arrange ranks. They taught cause and consequence, the delicate ballet of offense and defense, and if historians are to be believed, perhaps a smidge of respect for the gravity of real conflict. You line up the soldiers in rank and file, pat the last teardrop of polish off each helmet, and tuck them gently back into their velvet-lined box. The rhythmic click of tin meeting fabric is a quiet promise tomorrow's strategies await. Soon we'll turn to the lessons of responsibility that collecting these toys imparted. But for now, Breathe in the hush of your miniature battlefield and remember that even play can teach profound strategy, one tiny soldier at a time. You sink back into your favorite armchair, the velvet cushion sighing beneath you, and cradle a small velvet-lined tray brimming with penny toys. Alphabet blocks leaning against castle turrets, toy soldiers peeking through the gaps, and a lone tin microscope perched at the edge like a curious sentinel. The faint scent of beeswax polish returns, mingling with a whisper of lavender from your sachet, and you probably won't survive a real-life decluttering binge without screaming at your digital notifications. But here, in this parlor, cocoon organizing tiny tin treasures feels as soothing as a soft-spoken bedtime story. You pick up the first piece, a chipped A block from Section 4, and slide it into a perfectly sized compartment in your wooden display box. The click of wood meeting metal echoes through the hush like a page turning in a leather-bound tome. It reminds you of September 1883, when Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's first Sherlock Holmes novel dropped onto bookstore shelves, sparking feverish collections of penny dreadfuls in every parlor. Just as Doyle's readers organized their stories in neat volumes, Victorian children arranged their penny toys by theme, color, or size, learning the art of classification before any Dewey Decimal System existed. Historians still debate whether these miniature collections nurtured true organizational genius or simply indulged a penchant for neat. But you can't deny the pride that glimmers in your fingertips with each careful placement. A soft chuckle escapes you as you recall the time you tried to alphabetize your streaming service playlist, took 3 hours, and ended up with D-Z at the top of your sleep sounds list. Back then, a penny tin alphabet set offered instant gratification, A through Z, ready for your palm, no cloud syncing required. You lift a faded M cube and line it up next to its brethren, crushing the nagging urge to label everything on your desk. But you resist, because here, the only label you need is the one painted on each block. Next, you gather the tiny castle pieces from Section 5 and nest them side by side, the crenellations forming an orderly skyline that glints under your lamp's glow. The soft scratch of tin on tin is oddly meditative, like a mindfulness bell ringing in your ears. You imagine the grand opening of London's Natural History Museum in April 1881, where elaborate displays of specimens taught visitors the wonder of categorization, grouping fossils by era butterflies, by wing pattern. Penny toy collectors mirrored that museological magic on a miniature scale, cataloging their tin armies or castle sets with ledger entries written in copperplate script. Strange fact, some devoted collectors inscribed their names and dates on the bottom of prized toys, turning them into personal heirlooms. Tiny time capsules of childhood pride preserved beneath paint. Your fingertips brush over a parade of toy soldiers, Section 10's battlefield veterans arranged in perfect rank and file. You tap each base, gently testing their alignment, and the soft metallic click sounds like a miniature military tattoo. You whisper to yourself, "Attention, squad," recalling how in 1899, during Queen Victoria's Diamond Jubilee, real regiments paraded through the streets of London with drumbeats echoing against stone facades. Victorian kids reenacted that spectacle on their parlors' tabletops, placing their penny soldiers in Jubilee formations to celebrate imperial pageantry. Historians still debate whether this fostered blind nationalism or healthy pageantry in youth, but you can't argue with the gleaming pride that lit up a child's face as they saluted their tin troops. You let one soldier lean against a castle wall for contrast, then reach for the puppet theater from Section 9, sliding its brass latches into their slots in the display box. The gentle resistance of metal against metal feels reassuring, like closing a well-loved book. You imagine the first Royal Command performance at Windsor Castle in 1881, when puppet troupes entertained royalty tiny dramas unfolding before the monarch's eyes. At home, children preserved their penny theater figures between performances, assigning them numbered slots so no one went missing and no backstage chaos ensued. It was covert training in inventory management far more engaging than any teacher's ledger. A stray breeze from your fan stirs a loose scrap of felt, and you reach down to tuck it back into place around a miniature microscope, Section 8's scientific wonder. As you slide the tiny brass tube into its protective slot, you catch a whiff of metal and beeswax, grounding you in the tactile ritual of caretaking. You recall the 1876 Centennial Exposition in Philadelphia, where microscope displays dazzled American audiences, inspiring thousands to take up citizen science. Some British collectors imported extra slides and stored them alongside their toys, labeling each by specimen type, dandelion leaf, infusoria, crystal sugar. Few people know that a handful of children even kept notebooks of observations tucked beneath their velvet trays, and early citizen scientists' field guide, hidden in plain sight. You lean back and survey your handiwork, a symphony of tin and paint, each piece nested in its bespoke nook. The soft glow of your lamp turns the tray into a miniature stage where tin kings, queens, and lab equipment rest in silent harmony. It's as fulfilling as scrolling through a perfectly curated photo album. Only here, the photos are three-dimensional, and the only back button you need is a gentle nudge backward. A light snort escapes you as you recall your digital hoarding phase, thousands of unread emails, playlists, saved for later, and browser tabs clogging every window. Compare that to this single tray of penny toys, each inventory spot mapped out with precision and purpose. You tap your knuckles on the box's lid as if offering a ceremonial seal of approval. With a final sweep of your hand, you trace the outline of each compartment, whispering the old organizing mantra, a place for everything and everything in its place. The rhythmic motion soothes you, echoing the ASMR tingle you get from gentle whisper videos, but without any distracting pop-ups. As the candle's flame hovers low, you close the display box, the metal clasps clicking shut like a lullaby's final note. You tuck the velvet tray onto a shelf beside your storybooks, confident that tomorrow's journey, morals with figurines, geography on the felt map, or arithmetic through castle doors will be ready at your fingertips. For tonight, let the reassurance of order settle in your chest like a warm quilt. Soon, we'll explore how parental guidance shaped these play rituals, but for now, breathe deeply. Savor the satisfying click of closure and remember, responsibility can be taught one tiny toy at a time. You settle back into your chair, the gentle whir of your fan, a comforting undertone as you cradle a small tin coach, a toy you remember from Section 3's factory halls. And you can almost feel the reassuring firmness of your governess's hand, guiding yours. The polished oak armrest beneath your elbow hums with warmth, and the lingering scent of lavender sachets drifts through the air, smoothing away any stray worries. You probably won't survive today's free-range parenting experiment without scheduled screen time alerts pinging on your phone. But here, in the hushed glow of Victorian guidance, every penny toy was an opportunity for gentle course correction. Your fingers trace the coach's painted wheels while you imagine spring 1871. When Mrs. Beaton's book of household management first landed in parlors around Britain, offering mothers endless tips on moral instruction and child etiquette. In households large and small, parents treated penny toys as lesson plans in miniature tea sets for manners, tiny soldiers for discipline, and alphabet blocks for literacy. You lift the coach and imagine your mother's soft voice saying, "Now, dear, guide your coach carefully too fast and you might upset the passengers." It's parenting, as play a silent curriculum woven into your fingertips. You place the coach gently on your desk, its wheels making a soft plink against the wood, and picture a scene from 1872, little Henry Frustration, furrowing his brow, struggling to steer the coach along a straight line. His mother, corseted and composed, swoops in to demonstrate the proper angle, her lace sleeve whispering across the desk surface. That tiny intervention wasn't just about neatness. It was an exercise in patience and attention, qualities Victorian parents prized above all else. Strange fact, some mothers would mark faint chalk lines on nursery floors to create track courses, transforming playrooms into miniature driving schools, early traffic education, if you will. You inhale the faint tang of metal from the coach and recall how your own parents instructed you to count the wheels and passengers before each journey. 1, 2, 3. You'd whisper, drilling basic numeracy one spin at a time. You might compare that to today's parents glitching out when a calculator app misfires. Back then, every error was corrected with a gentle nudge and a whispered, "Try again, love." Historians still debate whether such structured play built genuine self-discipline or merely conditioned children to obey without question. But you can't argue with that steady sense of confidence you gained when your coach finally stayed on course. As you guide the coach across the desktop, the faint crackle of candle wax echoes under its wheels, and you picture Sunday afternoons when families gathered around a low table, mother at one side, father at the other, directing play like silent conductors. They'd interject softly, "Remember to say please," when you offer the sugar, turning every pretend tea party into a civics lesson in courtesy. You tap the coach's side with your thumbnail and murmur, "May I pass the milk," as your own little nod to those parlor drills, each repetition building social fluency as surely as a letter on a slate. Your gaze drifts to a chipped tin soldier from Section 10 standing at attention in a neat row beside a castle turret. You recall how father's mustache stiff with pride would assign battlefield commands, teaching strategy alongside respect for hierarchy. Advance 2 paces, then halt, they'd say, voice measured as a metronome. You obeyed boots tapping on the rug, learning both basic arithmetic, 2 plus 2, and deference to authority, all through the soft click of tin meeting textile. Strange fact, in some households, disobedient children had to perform extra toy maneuvers under candlelight. Until they mastered obedience, an early version of extra credit that ran on steam and parental willpower. You lean forward, fingertips brushing a velvet display case housing alphabet blocks from Section 4. And remember how aunties and tutors corrected every sideways A with velvet-tipped pointers, turning letter formation into a refined ritual. You'd hold your breath, toes curling in suspense, hoping your block tower wouldn't wobble under scrutiny. Modern kids might sneer at handwriting worksheets, but Victorian children knew that each carefully aligned block was a step toward cultured composure qualities once deemed as crucial as respiration. Historians still debate whether these tactile drills improved literacy more than a straightforward recitation, but the pride you felt when your rows stood straight remains as vivid as the day you stacked them. A soft breeze from your fan stirs dust motes in the candlelight, and you pick up a tiny moral figurine from Section 6. You recall your grandmother's hushed, storytelling voice guiding you to reenact parables with those little tin characters, the prodigal son's return, the good Samaritan's kindness, each lesson etched into your memory through the symmetrical choreography of play. You moved charity here, greed there, learning that every moral pivot, like shifting a figurine's arm, carried real-world implications. You whisper, "Show me mercy," as you restage the scene, each click of metal a gentle reminder of compassion's weight. Your thumb brushes the edge of a felt world map, dotted with landmarks from Section 7, and you visualize your father kneeling beside you to guide your fingers to London, Paris, and Cairo. He spoke of empire and exploration in the same breath as he corrected your pronunciation. That's Cairo, not Cairo, all while the penny toy monuments stood sentinel in your palm. Strange fact, some families even tied thin silk ribbons between landmarks to simulate trade routes, crafting tactile geographies that morphed your nursery into a global map room. You trace an invisible ribbon between two tin flags and feel the thrill of world citizenship instilled one soft tug at a time. You lean back, the coach resting on your lap, and think of the countless moments when parental guidance transformed mere play into a joint venture of learning. You recall afternoons when your governess voice, low and calm, guided you through penny toy science experiments from Section 8's microscope, patiently adjusting your nosepiece until cells came into view. Gently now, she'd coo hand barely touching yours, allowing you to discover rather than dictating every step. That blend of oversight and autonomy created a safe space for curiosity to bloom. Historians still debate whether such coaxing or staunch hands-off approaches better fostered innovation, but you can't dispute the thrill of that first microbial vista shimmering under candlelight. The coach's wheels whisper against your palm as you rotate it, and you recall your parents' parting admonitions before bedtime. Remember, dearest, everything you learn tonight will shape tomorrow's character. You roll the coach away from you as if sending it off on a night journey, and you feel the weight of their hopes hitching a ride. You quip softly, "You probably won't survive my next digital password reset, but at least I've never lost a penny toy under the couch." As the candle flickers low, you press the coach back into its velvet box, the metal sinking into plush darkness like memories into your heart. The hush of the room feels richer now, infused with echoes of patient corrections, whispered encouragements, and the soft click of 10 lessons. Soon, we'll explore the heated debates over playtime's role in education, but for now, let the gentle guidance of those Victorian parents settle in your mind like a lullaby. One tiny toy, one soft instruction at a time. You sink into your armchair as the fan's soft drone hums a steady rhythm, and you cradle a selection of penny toys, alphabet blocks, castle turrets, tin soldiers, each piece humming with echoes of lessons past. The scented haze of lavender and beeswax wraps around you like a well-loved blanket, and you probably won't survive today's multitasking demands without your phone pinging every 2 minutes. But here, in this gentle parlor, time stretches like warm honey. Tonight, you confront the grand debate that has simmered since the 1870 Education Act mandated schooling for all. Did penny toys truly cultivate young minds? Or were they merely parlor distractions, masquerading as pedagogy? You lift a castle turret from Section 5, its chipped moss green paint, reminding you of the arithmetic drills you performed there, tower counts and mote subtractions, and set it beside a neat row of alphabet blocks from Section 4. The block's primary colors, dulled by decades of handling, glint under your lamp's amber glow. Some Victorian commentators argued that these hands-on tools revolutionized learning by engaging children's senses, while others scorned them as frivolous tchotchkes that pulled focus from proper instruction. You run your thumb across the sea with its painted crescent moon, remembering how that tiny symbol once turned phonics into a midnight adventure. In the distance, you imagine the pomp of June 1880, when the Education Act's first enforcement took effect and school inspectors roamed classrooms like Victorian SWAT teams, measuring attendance and lesson plans. Penny toys, critics claimed, undermined uniformity. How could every school district guarantee that a child's tin microscope from a Section 8 matched its neighbor's? Historians still debate whether playing with rainbow-hued blocks and miniature moral tableau deepened real understanding or simply offered a pacifier for restless pupils, especially when masters preferred the rigidity of blackboard lessons to the unpredictable jingle of dropped tin. You tap a tiny tin soldier from Section 10 against the table, the soft plink echoing like a metronome for your thoughts. Proponents of toy-based teaching pointed to improved attention spans. Children who arranged soldiers in flanking formations demonstrated strategic thinking and sequencing skills that surpassed rote memorization exercises. Yet detractors countered that these were mere parlor tricks, saying, if you polish the tin soldier rather than recite your multiplication tables, what have you truly learned? The clatter of metal on wood feels oddly personal, a reminder that every play session carried both promise and peril for eager young minds. You pause to slide a moral figurine from Section 6 into place beside the pyramid from Section 7 and inhale the mingled scents of beeswax and old pine. Supporters of narrative play argued that kids absorbed ethical nuance through reenacting parables, citing improved moral reasoning in letters from Victorian parents proud of their offspring's charity work. Critics snapped back that no matter how many tiny Samaritans you assembled, charity can't be taught solely through tin tableau. It demands real-world practice like volunteering at a soup kitchen rather than staging a tabletop drama. Running your fingertips along a chipped alphabet block, you recall the whispered controversy in scholarly journals of the 1890s when educational reformers like Mary Wollstonecraft distanced themselves from trinket pedagogy, insisting that genuine literacy emerged from structured phonics drills rather than colorful cubes. Historians still debate whether those colorful blocks served as mnemonic marvels or distractions that muddled phonemic awareness. You feel the cool metal underside of the block press into your palm as you weigh the arguments, each viewpoint as compelling as the next. The flicker of your candle casts dancing shadows over Section 9's puppet theater backdrop, and you imagine parents gathering around each week to critique the latest performance. Did puppet dramatizations sharpen empathy, critics asked, or simply lull children into attentive silence while adults napped behind lace curtains? Strange fact, a handful of Victorian diaries record tutors sneaking toy figurines into lectures to jolt students awake, an early form of pop quiz that leaned on surprise rather than scolding. Those hidden tin injections may have been the very sparks that kept curiosity alive. You scoop up the penny tin microscope and cradle it gingerly, recalling Section 8's microbial revelations. Advocates hail these microscopes as pioneers of scientific literacy, yet cautionary tales spread of kids slicing specimens too thin with that razor attachment. Those who survived bragged of smudged slides and minor cuts, while skeptics warned of needless risk. Historians still debate whether the thrill of cellular discovery outweighed the hazards of homemade dissection, but you can't deny the wonder that danced across a child's eyes when chloroplasts drifted into view like emerald constellations. Pausing, you arrange the 10 landmarks from Section 7 into a neat semicircle, each mini monument a testament to worldly knowledge. Geography enthusiasts claimed that pawing over a tin pyramid or Eiffel Tower cultivated global awareness, yet detractors grumbled that such kits offered only snapshots of empire, not the messy complexity of cultures and geographies beyond painted tin. You lean back studying the world you've built on your felt map and wonder whether your fingertips imprint more understanding than modern globe apps ever could. You set down your landmarks and press your palms together, fingertips brushing the soft wool of the rug. The great debate stretches before you. Like an unfinished ledger, did penny toys empower young learners to connect theory with tactile experience? Or did they lull students into passive amusement under the guise of progress? Historians still debate whether the benefits of kinesthetic play outweighed the call for uniform curricula. But you can't help smiling at the thought that maybe the truth lies somewhere in the in-between, a blend of structure and sensory delight. As the candle gutters low, casting long shadows across your miniature classroom of toys, you feel the weight of centuries of argument settle in your chest. You recall that dented turret from Section 5, the one that earned its battle scar and taught you about resilience, and you stroke its rough edge with reverence. Maybe the real lesson isn't about which side won the debate, but about discovering how each toy sparked a different facet of learning, imagination, empathy, strategy, curiosity, With a soft exhale, you cradle the handful of penny toys in your lap, letting their cool metal warmth radiate through your fingers. You think of the modern classroom's digital whiteboards and standardized textbooks, and wonder if any tablet screen can match the magic of that tiny tin world. You whisper to yourself, I probably won't survive this spreadsheet report tomorrow, but at least I've held history in my hand. As the last flicker of candlelight dances across the parlor, you place each toy gently into its velvet-lined box, sealing away the echoes of debate and the promise of tomorrow's discoveries. You breathe deeply, savoring the hush that follows the final click of metal clasp. Soon we'll explore the evolution of penny toys into today's educational games. But for now, let the silence settle around you, like a soft hymn to curiosity, reminding you that every question, every toy, and every debate helped shape the gentle education you carry in your heart. You lean forward, fingertips brushing the smooth plastic of a brightly colored Montessori knobbed cylinder set so different from the cold tin of Section 4's alphabet blocks, and feel the whisper of a new era settling into your palms. The faint whiff of beeswax polish has been replaced by a hint of fresh vinyl, mingling with the soft drone of your fan like a modern remix of the parlor's old hush. You probably won't survive today's same-day shipping expectations without a panic at checkout. But here, tracing your finger over each plastic cylinder, teaches you how education evolved beyond penny toys. It feels like only yesterday that you were counting castle turrets in Section 5 or peering through a penny tin microscope in Section 8. Yet, by 1907, Maria Montessori's first Casa dei Bambini in Rome introduced child-led learning materials designed to refine motor skills and sensory perception. You hold a Montessori bead stare beside a chipped tin turret, noting how their graduated sizes invite you to explore concepts of sequencing and dimension without any hidden sliders or secret levers. Historians still debate whether Montessori's sensory materials democratized education or merely replaced one tactile system with another. But you can't deny the quiet confidence you felt when you matched each cylinder to its hole no tiny shards of tin required. You place the cylinder set onto your desk and slide a row of spirograph wheels next to it, an early 1960s classic that introduced geometric drawing through interlocking plastic gears. The smell of fresh plastic paint tickles your nose, reminiscent of summer camp art classes rather than Victorian parlors. You remember hearing that the spirograph debuted at the Nuremberg Toy Fair in 1965, astonishing visitors with patterns more intricate than any embossed penny tin figurine motif. Strange fact, the original spirograph gears were so tightly toleranced that some children could sketch complex mandalas without any instructions and unspoken tutorial in mathematical beauty. Your fingertips trace the ridged edges of a spirograph wheel, and you imagine 1964's World's Fair in New York, where technology and culture collided in a futuristic showcase. There, toy designers marveled at how plastic injection molding allowed for endless shapes and colors, unlike the limited palettes of tin paint in Section 3's factories. Historians still debate whether the plastic revolution liberated play or merely ushered in an era of disposability. But you can't deny the thrill of shaking out hundreds of colorful rings onto a single page, creating a kaleidoscope as mesmerizing as any Victorian wind-up bird. You lean back and lift a set of alphabet magnets, PVC letters with magnetic backs off your fridge door, contrasting them with the more labor-intensive tin blocks you met in Section 4. The vinyl letters are pliant, safe, and shock-resistant, no risk of lead poisoning or paper cuts, and you can almost hear the squeak of magnets colliding with your refrigerator's steel facade. You recall that by the mid-20th century, fridge magnets had become a staple of playful kitchens, turning meal planning into a letter-sorting game. Strange fact, some early magnetic letters were scented with vanilla or strawberry oils, so children could taste the alphabet and olfactory gimmick that quietly faded after a rash of sticky residue incidents. A soft click follows as you position a digital tablet beside the magnets, far removed from any penny toy, but part of the same lineage of educational tools. The screen glows, offering apps that teach phonics, math, and geography with interactive animations. You tap a geography app recalling Section 7's tiny tin landmarks, and the tactile pleasure of moving Big Ben or the pyramid across a felt map. Here, a single swipe transports you from London to Luxor in milliseconds. Historians still debate whether screens can replicate the sensory richness of physical toys, but you can't argue with the way your heart skipped a beat when a mini rocket blasted off in augmented reality. Your fan's hum seems to merge with the tablet's gentle chime, and you breathe in the faint plastic aroma with fond nostalgia. As technology sprinted forward in the late 20th century, toy companies embraced electronic components, flashcards with sound chips, microcomputers teaching basic coding, and handheld games that buzzed with pixelated challenges. Strange fact, the earliest learning toys with built-in speech synthesis were so large and power-hungry, they required full-sized batteries the size of soda cans, hardly the pocket-sized marvels we use today. You smile at how far we've come from filling a felt map with tin monuments to downloading entire encyclopedias in the palm of your hand. As you set the tablet aside and run your fingers over the lid of a wooden puzzle cube, an homage to Rubik's invention in 1974, you're reminded that despite technology's leaps, the core of educational play remains the same, guiding your mind through problem-solving, sensory exploration, and narrative immersion. You twist a face of the cube, hearing the smooth click-snap of plastic pieces moving against each other, and you think of the first mass-produced cubes selling out within weeks, a frenzy unmatched since penny toys flew off market stalls in 1855. Historians still debate whether puzzles like Rubik's Cube sharpened young minds in the same way penny toy soldiers taught tactics. But you feel the familiar tingle of curiosity that powered all those tiny tin industries. Your gaze drifts to the shelf where your velvet-lined tray from Section 11 now coexists with bins of Legos, colorful plastic bricks that snap together with satisfying precision. Each brick carries the promise of construction and deconstruction, echoing the creative chaos of Section 3's Nuremberg assembly lines, while offering modular systems that outgrew any single lesson plan. Strange fact, early Lego sets included metal axles and gears disguised as colorful blocks, a sweet nod to tin's mechanical roots hidden within plastic exteriors. You reach out and connect two bricks, feeling the same pride you once felt, stacking tin castles, proof that every era finds its own way to spark imagination. As the candle gutter flickers low, You reflect on the journey from penny toys to the polymaterial plastics of today. The evolution wasn't just about materials, it was about shifting educational philosophies, moving from rote drills with tin toys to child-led discovery with Montessori cylinders, from moral tableau and puppet theaters to digital simulations of real-world dilemmas. Historians still debate whether modern tools have outpaced the gentle tactility of penny toys or simply built upon their legacy. But you sense that every teaching aid, tin, wood, plastic, or silicon has carried a spark of wonder across childhood. You let out a soft sigh and gather your modern educational toys alongside their penny tin predecessors, a plastic bead stare settling next to a wooden block, a spirograph wheel nestled against a tin pyramid, a tablet glowing beside a row of tin soldiers. The sensory tapestry of materials and eras swirls in your mind, the cold resistance of metal, the grain of wood, the smooth give of plastic, and the ephemeral glow of screens. Each taught you lessons in sequence, empathy, strategy, or discovery, and each reflected the values and technologies of its time. You lean back, the hush of the room enriched by the layered echoes of play spanning centuries. You whisper to yourself, I probably won't survive another unboxing of 250 new toy sets this afternoon, but at least I've witnessed the timeless dance of learning tools evolve from tin to touch screens. Then with a gentle breath, you tuck each piece back into its place. Tin turrets beside plastic cylinders, wooden puzzles beside vinyl letters, creating a mosaic of educational history in your parlor. Before we move into our final gentle lull, take a moment to feel the weight of invention in your hands and the persistent hum of curiosity that bridges every material. In tomorrow's section, we'll drift into the soft focus of educational legacy. But for now, let the tactile symphony of metal, wood, plastic, and pixels settle your thoughts like a lullaby proof that no matter the medium, learning remains a journey of tiny wonders. You lean back in your chair, the whisper of your fan, a gentle backdrop as you cradle the familiar tin and plastic motley of your educational toys. Alphabet blocks from Section 4, castle turrets from Section 5, the penny tin microscope from Section 8, peeking out between a wooden puzzle cube and a glowing tablet. The soft hiss of the candle gutter mingles with the lingering scent of lavender sachets and beeswax polish, folding the room into a cocoon of memory and possibility. You probably won't survive a digital detox retreat without twitching for a screen. But here, the tactile orchestra of metal, wood, vinyl, and silicone reminds you that learning has always happened in your hands. You tap the corner of a chipped tin pyramid Section 7's miniature Egypt against the arm of your chair and imagine the opening of the Berlin to Baghdad Railway in 1883, a feat of engineering that stretched continents as expansively as these toys once stretched young imaginations. Historians still debate whether those toy pyramids actually sowed seeds of global curiosity or simply reinforced imperial worldviews, but you feel the cool weight of possibility pressing into your palm. Strange fact, some souvenir toy pyramids were equipped with tiny bellows that blew dandelion fluff out when squeezed a playful nod to desert winds that few collectors ever discovered. You slide the pyramid aside and pick up a smooth Montessori cylinder, its graduated diameter a world away from the tin's rigid edges, and marvel at how child-led learning pivoted on Maria Montessori's insight that hands-on materials must invite exploration rather than mandate answers. You compare the cylinder's sleek vinyl finish to the tin's worn patina and realize that every era's teaching tools carry both the fingerprint of their makers and the echo of their learners' triumphs. You murmur to yourself, I probably won't survive lining these up in perfect order again, as you match each cylinder to its slot, the soft click a tribute to decades of sensory refinement. Your gaze drifts to the row of tin soldiers. Section 10's miniature strategists stand into attention beside Lego bricks that gleam like tiny cityscapes. You assemble a platoon of plastic figures for comparison, imagining a classroom in 1920, when chalkboards still ruled and sand tables were novel adjuncts. Penny toys taught basic tactics. Later sand tables let children sculpt troop movements in 3 dimensions. Now digital simulations layer complex variables into every decision. Historians still debate whether strategy games encourage militaristic mindsets or simply sharpen problem-solving skills. But you can't deny the thrill of guiding that cavalry charge, whether in tin or in code. You tuck the soldiers back and reach for your puppet theater from Section 9. Its painted proscenium, now shadowed by the glow of a smartphone screen displaying interactive storytelling apps. You remember the hush that fell over families in 1869 when amateur troops performed Dickens' adaptations with those tin puppets. Each string pulled a lesson in empathy and narrative structure. Today's apps automate voices and backdrops, but you relish the silent patience required to master your own puppet choreography. Strange fact, a few penny theaters came with hidden whistles that signaled scene changes. Modern streamers could learn a thing or two about tension building from that analog drum roll. The microscope from Section 8 beckons next its brass tube nestled between a magnifying app on your tablet and a set of plastic-prepared slides. You recall November 24th, 1859, when Victorian amateurs first lined up to peer at pond algae through similar penny toy microscopes, chasing Darwinian dreams in every droplet. Historians still debate whether those toys seeded scientific careers or merely gifted a fleeting thrill of discovery. But you lean in and adjust the focus wheel, tasting that old excitement as leaf cells drift into view like emerald galaxies. You whisper, I probably won't survive finding bacteria in my bathtub again, and let the moment settle. Finally, you survey the tableau of toys arrayed across your lap, each a chapter in the evolving story of education, from tin to wood to plastic to pixel. The soft glow of your lamp casts each piece in warm relief, and you feel the cumulative weight of centuries of curiosity pressing against your fingertips. You think of the debates that raged around the 1870 Education Act, the controversies over penny toy pedagogy in the 1890s, the rise of Montessori methods in the early 1900s, and the digital revolution of the 21st century. Each new tool built on the last, carrying forward the same spark to kindle wonder, foster skill, and connect mind to world through the simplest instrument, your own hands. You rest the tin pyramid on your knee and close your eyes, hearing the faint echo of clinking metal, the whisper of plastic snapping into place, the tap of a screen unlocking new worlds. This legacy is neither linear nor triumphant. It is a tapestry of experiments, missteps, radical inventions, and small refinements. But when you cradle these toys, all of them close to your heart, you sense a continuity that every tool, no matter how humble, presented lessons, both gentle and profound, planting seeds of knowledge that sprouted in countless directions. As the candle flickers one last time before its final exhale, you gather your toys into a slow, deliberate embrace. Alphabet blocks nestled against cylinders, tin soldiers leaning into Lego minifigures, microscope tubes tucked beside tablets. You exhale, feeling the hush settle like soft snow across your mind, each memory tingling like an ASMR whisper. Soon we'll move to our closing lullaby, a gentle fade into calm that honors this lineage of learning and sends you off with a final breath of wonder. But for now, let the symphony of tin and plastic, wood and screen echo softly in your fingertips. Proof that education's greatest tools are those small treasures we hold in our hands. Final 300 words. Now, as the world outside drifts toward sleep, feel the gentle hush of the parlor settle around you like a warm quilt. Listen to the distant whisper of ancient factories where tin was stamped, painted, and transformed into vessels of knowledge. Recall the soft click of alphabet blocks, the plink of counted castles, and the hush of a microscope's lens revealing hidden worlds. Feel each texture beneath your fingertips, the cool resistance of metal, the grain of wood, the smooth give of plastic, the soft glow of screens, and know that every lesson ever learned began with curiosity and a willing touch. Let your thoughts slow one breath at a time. Imagine the lullaby of clinking tin soldiers marching into formation, the whisper of moral figurines reenacting timeless parables, and the hushed swoosh of pen and paper notes tracing maps across felt continents. These echoes cradle you a lullaby, woven from centuries of discovery, reminding you that knowledge is both a world to explore and a gentle song to soothe the soul. Close your eyes, and in the quiet dark, let these memories fade softly, like the last star flickering at dawn. Feel the reassurance that every tiny toy, every tactile tool has carried you closer to wonder, a companionship of gentle instruction that lives on in every quiet moment of curiosity. Let the final echoes of soft metal and warm vinyl lull you into peaceful rest. End of script. Sweet dreams.